Hey all, welcome back to the show. Today's episode, it's a good one. We're heading straight into the world of fences, but not just any fences. I'm talking curved concrete pads, sloped backyards, and kind of impossible to measure kind of jobs. And the guy making it all work, here we have him, Michael from Madison Fence Company. We're going to chat about how he got started, what it takes to run a fencing company these days, and how he's using this crazy cool measuring tool called Moasure to tackle slopes, curves, and all the wild stuff folks try to avoid, I guess. So, Michael, you're very welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. You tell us all where you're actually dialing in from.
Yeah, thanks, Barry, for having me on. I
Pleasure.
am from Madison, Wisconsin. It's about 2.5 hours north of Chicago. And so my brother David, he started this company back in 2020. And it was his background was in roof sales, and then he worked for T-Mobile and then a local cell company, and did really well. And so the parent company came to him and said, "Hey, will you do door-to-door sales for internet, TV, and phone service?" And so he did that for a while, did very well. And our market became pretty saturated with that. And so in order for him to either keep being successful with that company, he'd either need to travel a ton or figure something out. And so about a month before COVID, he decided he wanted to go and start something. And so he did that, and then all of a sudden everything shut down. And so he was like, "Oh my goodness!" And a lot of DoorDash and a lot of Instacart and different things like that. And that spring, his neighbor was building a fence, and he said, "Hey, do you want to help me build a fence? We can build a fence for you." And so my brother has dogs, and so he was like, "Yes, for sure, let's do it." And as he was building it, he tells me that he kind of had this thought of, "Man, there are a lot of people stuck at home right now that want to take as much advantage as they can with that time when they're forced to be at home." And so a lot of people were looking to get fences at that time. And so he's like, "I think I could do this." And so he started subcontracting for someone down in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and he to learn how to build fences. And that was in the fall. And then I got him his first aluminum job, and that was for a family that I had been a nanny for when I was in college. And so I remember moments where I was sitting inside watching the kids, and he was outside slaving away, digging holes and figuring out how to build that fence. And so if you fast forward to that first full year of 2021, hired on some crews and was basically just flying blind, no background in the fence industry at all. And I remember him talking to me and being like, "Hey, I think that you could come and be a part of this. I think this could be something special." And I had a daughter and one on the way, and a family, and I was like, I don't know, that's kind of risky to me. Do I want to, is this going to be there? And so 1 year later, he talked me into it. And so then I started out building fences, being someone who would, uh, yeah, again, no background in really the trades. But we came in and we said, "You know what, we can do it." And so we spent that full year where I was basically just installing. And then the following year, I was more in charge of crews and some of the operations. And then after that year, would have been in 2023. I remember uh, there was one appointment where David said, "Hey, I can't take this one. Can you do it?" And I hate sales, at least then. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's scary. I don't know if I can do that." And I don't really have an interest in salespeople or slimy and things like that. And so I just went out, and I was the benefit that I think I had was I was very familiar with how to build those fences, and I had enough experience knowing what most people like or don't like. And so really the goal for me was just going in and trying to help people and say, "Hey, if I were living here, this is what I would be thinking about." And then I did pretty well. And so it eventually got to a point where I stumbled on Moasure, online and I was like, hey, this tool looks pretty good. And we had a really big project that we were bidding. And it was about 500 feet of ADA handrail on top of like an engineered wall. And then it was going to be another 500 feet for their sidewalks. And you had to do custom slopes, custom angles on your posts and things like that. And I was like, I don't know how to measure that. And so then I remember that we bought the Moasure one and tried it out. And I was like, okay, learning how to do it. And I tried it with some backyards. And I think that I spent, the first few times, going, and then it says error, error, error. There are 25 things you can improve on. And I was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be kicking it when I'm walking, or, there's a little bit of trick you learn. But then I got to a point where I was like, okay, this is pretty neat. And so I brought it out. And the interesting part about this project is that we were about an hour and a half away. And so we go there and we were taking measurements and have to bid this project. And we have plans, but plans aren't always exactly as it's built. And so one, it was the biggest project at the time that I had ever tried to bid. So I was really nervous that I would get something wrong. And then two, I was wanting to be really confident about, am I doing this right with Moasure? And so if we get it wrong, it's another 2 hours of driving to get back out there and measure, and you're basing your ordering just on that moment. And so I went out there and I did everything. And then I spent hours after that trying to be like, can I trust this? And so I brought it in and we use ArcSight. So I brought those measurements in and all of the elevation data and try to figure out, okay, where is my spacing for all of my posts? What angles do I have to get these welded at in order for them to work well? And so then the top block had a 90-degree turn in it. And so it's a rounded corner. And our supplier, shout out to Digger Specialties, they're a great company for anything aluminum. They can do curved panels, but I have to tell them the exact radius that I'm doing it in. And so I ended up measuring everything out. And then I got to the end, and the measurement that I measured was a little bit different than the plans. And I doubted myself, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go with the plans. And guess what? I should have gone with Moasure because Moasure was more accurate. And so we had to adjust some things, but it was actually after that, I was like, okay, I can start to trust this, as long as I'm doing things right. But then all the angles for the handrail worked out perfectly, and we had just enough material that and everything worked out amazing. And that was like the first taste of, wow, this can really save you a ton of time. And so, uh, that was 2023 was the first year that we did it. 2024, I guess, was when we completed that project. And then since then, anytime that I'm on a sale, I don't always know when I'm going to need it, right? Because I usually am going to take the iPhone and I'll go to the Measure app. And so I'll go, let's see if we can get that right there,
Yeah.
right? And the
Hmm.
the Measure app is great because it's quick and if you don't need precision, it's pretty accurate, but if you don't need like down to the half inch or things like that, um, it's nice because I get to choose how long I want this to be, if that makes sense. So I can see in real time, oh, 6 foot, 6'1". Okay, come back, mark my point, and then you just take a picture, and it kind of gives you a feel of what that space will be like. And I would say that's the default, but there are times when that is really hard to do. And so one of the examples would be earlier this year. I get assigned a project to go and quote, and I'm told that they want it to be like a split rail fence, and they just want some welded wire mesh for their garden. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I bet they're going to want something fancier than that. And so I show up and I didn't realize it, but I get there and I just see a bunch of weird curved concrete plots that are super custom, super, it'd be very difficult for me to figure out um, by calculating where all of those corners need to be, how you need to turn your, or how do you need to place your posts with proper spacing so you can get good results. And so I was like, oh, well, thank God I have Moasure just sitting there in the passenger seat. And so I just went out there and I said, all right, guys, yeah, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and we'll talk through, show you samples. And then when we're done, I'll just go ahead and I have this really great measurement tool. It takes into account elevation, everything, and you'll be able to see a great aerial view when I'm done of what this project's going to look like. And so I went around and uh, measured 3 different plots, and then there were utility lines that were marked as well. And so after that, I was like, well, that can be really important in terms of planning. If I know there's a gas line here, I don't want a post going there. And so I might have to shift where that post goes. And so I factored that in and drew out the gas lines independently of the entire fence line, if you will. So that way I can just see how quickly is this going to be an issue? Where might it be an issue? And so I could even share my screen and show you kind of
Yeah,
what ended
sure.
up happening. This is the finished product from
Mm.
ArcSight. And so the great thing about ArcSight and Moasure is I can take the measurements in Moasure, save that file, and 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, or 1 second later, go into ArcSight and I would just come over and I say, I'm going to draw. And then I would say, okay, measure with Moasure app. And then all of a sudden, whatever files opened, I'm there, I hit return, and then it would send all of the information in here. And
That's
so
right.
I have layers in here that are from the different measurements that I took. So if I kind of peel this away to what did it look like originally, uh, I would have gotten this would have been one of my lines from Moasure. That's another line that I took in Moasure. And then if I get rid of this, you'll see I guess it's underneath the black, but this is essentially what came in from Moasure. And then I traced over top with what I needed for to adjust spacing or make adjustments for those for the gas lines or for whatever else is there. And then I made it look presentable and understandable for the customer at that point. And so then you get to the end and all of a sudden I can put in whatever details I need. And so like important things like if we have hand digs because of utilities, we're charging extra. And I want to have every opportunity for that customer to see it so they're not surprised in the end
Mm.
and things like that. And so it that project ended up turning out from a product standpoint, uh, it was amazing. I think that they were very happy with the end result of the fence. And so it took, because I took the time to plan it out, and it made the project much more achievable in a quicker amount of time. But then I would also say that Moasure allowed me to just take the measurements, not have to think about anything, and know that when I get back to my computer, I'm going to be able to work on this and trust those measurements. And I don't have to try to do all those calculations in the field in my brain and write everything down. Because it's one thing if it's a straight line and it's just 100 feet, 100 feet. But something like this takes a whole lot more brain power than I'm capable of to do it in my head, you know?
Same here. That is so impressive. I mean, I don't know where to start. Looking at that, it's an irregular, it's complex. You got multiple layers there. And you're telling me you just picked up Moser here in the palm of your hand, so to speak, and just walked around the space and it's measured and drawn it all out and it gives you the total area, total perimeter. You got the elevations if you want them, and you can immediately seamlessly just dovetail, let that whole measurement cascade into ArcSight and build on your measurement.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Wow. And I'm looking at it there as well, things I didn't think of. So for every utility, there's an extra cost, which I must admit is not something that came immediately to my mind. But if you're missing those in the first place, that can easily haunt your budget if you've not accommodated for it. I don't know if you know, and maybe you're using it already, but as you're measuring, you can actually, if you come across a utility, a gas, an electric, a pipeline, even if it's a rock or whatever it is, you can on the fly, mid-measurement, um, just type it in, like make a note, gas, irrigation, electrics, or whatever. So it appears as a label within your Moasure app that will carry across to ArcSight. I know we've just done a new update that's just come out in the last week, as it happens, 3.2, the version of our app of the Moasure app, as for free. There's no subscription or anything like that. And it now allows you to not only input those details, but to use your voice notes, your voice as well, rather than stopping and having to type. So we got that feedback from the likes of yourself, Michael, and many other contractors within the fleet to make the whole thing more seamless, quicker. If I'm just wondering, like, how if we start from the beginning, and
Sure.
I want to ask you, like, first of all, it's brave to change direction in where you're going with your career and your life, whatever. But then it's even more brave, to my mind, to be staring a pandemic in the face. You've kind of just brushed over that. Well, that's a pretty big thing. Like you're staring a pandemic in the face, you're changing direction, going into an industry that you're not like well skilled, informed, and versed in, and you're taking opportunities as they come, and now you're here. I mean, you're smiling as you say it. I mean, what kind of jobs get you fired up, and what was your first job that's led you to where we are, or where you are rather?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. I come from a strong Christian heritage, and
Hmm.
my grandpa was a pastor for many, many years, and he came from a long line of alcoholism. And he and my grandma, before they even were Christians, they saw the destruction that was in their family, and just generation after generation of um, I think just struggle and misery. And they were like, we don't want that for ourselves. And so they completely went sober. And as they became parents, they would actually, like, they would tell me growing up, we prayed for you and your kids, right? And so I think that in terms of my ability to, I firmly believe I could do anything and be happy. And a lot of that is because of my faith in Jesus, and because of the strong heritage that came before me with my parents, and coming up in a great family. And my mom would tell me consistently growing up, Michael, I believe you'll be able to do anything and be successful, and keep God first. Um, and she would I have six brothers and sisters, so she would always say, I believe she said this to every kid, but she made everyone feel like they were her favorite. And so she would be like, Michael, I wouldn't say this to all my kids, but, and then she'd go to the next one and say, I wouldn't say this to all my kids. But she had this way of making everyone feel like they're her favorite. And so I think that all of us had this strong entrepreneurial spirit within us. And my dad, he started a daycare with my grandma in 2003. And so we grew up in business, and we grew up at 12 years old, first job making $5 an hour washing dishes. And so I think that the work ethic has always been there in our family. And of the seven kids, there's David and myself in the fence company, and then there is Chris, our younger brother, and his company is all staining and sealing and restoration. And then we have my brother-in-law Joe, who he's an electrician, and we're all in the same shop actually. And then the younger ones, Daniel, he just turned 18, and he's 7 months into his company. And it's a competing stain company with my brother, which is funny, right? So there's this aspect of, I think all of us have the belief that whatever we set our minds to, we can be successful if we work hard, right? And so when it comes to the fencing world, I think that the parts of this business that I love are going to be being with customers, being with people, actually solving a problem, and then being able to build something. So when it comes to the tech side of things, and building out all of our sales systems or our CRM software, I've been blessed to be able to be a part of that and actually have a decision so that when it comes to new technology like Moasure, I can be like, hey, let's give this a try. I'm willing to pioneer it and see if that makes sense for our company. And
Well,
so that's one of the joys of being in a small business, where if you get into a big corporation, it can be tougher to have change because that's an established thing. And so on the small business side, you have the freedom to move a little bit more on a dime. But you're also, there are challenges that come with that too. And so I would say when it comes to, like I think of one of the most memorable jobs that I was building, when I was first starting out, you get to the end of setting all your posts and you look down that line and you kind of come in and then all of a sudden they all just disappear, right? And it's like,
mm,
wow, it feels good to do
mm,
something with excellence.
a job worth
And
done.
yeah, and it's like, wow, this is it. There's something intrinsically good about knowing that you did your best and your best was really good.
Mm,
And so improving constantly. And then once you transition into more of like a sales role, there's nothing better that feeling than, wow, I sold this job and I was able to say, if you go with us, we may be more expensive, but you're going to be so glad at the end that you went with us and everything goes smoothly. And they get to the end, they're like, wow, I'm going to leave you a review on Google that says they were the most expensive, and I'm so glad I went with them. Like there's something about that where it's like, wow, it feels good to serve people well and to be able to deliver on the things that you're promising.
absolutely. I think there's so much to unpack there. There's a lot of lessons to learn from the generation that have gone before us and having belief and having faith and just going for where your heart is leading you. And despite the obstacles that are in your way that you've mentioned there, just knowing, I guess, because of your faith, that all things will be made good. And I also noticed as well is that some of the jobs you've taken on and that you've mentioned, they're not easy jobs. And I know that part of the world, Wisconsin, you're from, that place is as wild as your imagination. It's up, down, and around. There's hardly a straight line in the place. And I guess I want to ask us before Moasure here entered the scene, Michael, how were you tackling measurements, especially on, I don't know, tricky slopes and curves and uneven terrain kind of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was guessing, a lot of guessing. And so like you have a
Yeah.
wheel and I don't know if you've met Robert Whitaker at Fence Tech yet. He's a
The
great
name rings
guy.
a bell. I was there
Yeah.
this year in Salt Lake City as it happened, but great
Yes.
show,
And
great people, great energy.
I'm bummed I was supposed to be there.
That's right. I think you said you were having a newborn,
Yes.
a baby. So congratulations. I never even
Thank
said
you.
that. My apologies.
No worries. Yeah, baby number three, Liberty. She is
Wow.
amazing.
Wow.
And last night she only woke up once. So that's
Wow.
great.
Well, that's a
Making
blessing. That's
progress.
great. Well,
Yes.
well done.
So, Robert and Michael, he's Purple Coaching is his consulting company, and then he works or owns Magnolia Fence and Patio down in Texas. And so they were up here visiting us, and he said, all right, Michael, let's have a little competition. Let's take your wheel that you measure with every single day. And let's take the Measure app on the iPhone and let's do a long 60-foot tape measure across a driveway and just see which's more accurate. Right. And so um, I went ahead, did mine, and then he did his, and I was off by like 9 inches, and his was down to the inch perfect. And I'm like, wow, that was a year ago. And I was like, wow, I didn't know, I couldn't trust the iPhone before then. But now I'm like, okay, that does really well if you need to do straight lines. And let's say you're not trying to deal with weird elevation, or in Wisconsin, there's snow. So like,
Mm.
how are you going to set something on the ground and, trust, not have that get messed up? And so that's a lot of what we were using of, okay, it's either a wheel. We discovered, the Measure app, and that's great. But again, the Measure app is not perfect, and it's not something that can, like, there's a tool for every purpose, right? And so am I using the Moasure on absolutely every job? Well, if I go and I see, okay, it's 3 sections of fence, one straight line, I think I'm okay doing that in my head. But the moment that you get into something where you're doing odd shapes or you're doing something where like there have been times where we often get surveys for people that are PDFs and they have the plat, they have the house on it, and you can just draw it out on in ArcSite and you have the right dimensions. Other times they don't, but they do have property stakes marked out on the property itself. And so what I've done is I said, okay, I'm going to use Moasure. I'm going to do a first layer of marking the property pins. Then I'm going to do a second layer of the house. And then from there, I'll do the fence. And that way I can take it back and give the customer a actual, it's not an official survey, but it's a much closer representation. And especially when someone is getting HOA approval or permitting, they need to see what are the setbacks that you're including and things like that. And it's a service that we can provide that is, going to be cheaper to them than getting it surveyed, but it's close enough, to be able to get things submitted and things like that. And so I've done it like that. I've also used it for more of like the backyard designer type of customer. And so maybe they have a pool area, they have an existing fence, and they want to see what would it look like if we changed the fence and kept everything. And so you could use Moasure and kind of draw out this is where the pool is, this is where the current fence is, bring it straight into a CAD system and go into SketchUp and say, all right, here's your 3D rendering now of what everything looks like. And that can be the difference between making a $40,000 sale and not, or
Mm.
justifying your price at $40,000. And it's like, yes, but this is what we're giving you. And so I've sold many jobs that were very expensive, and I believe that the tools that I use are definitely helping in creating extra detail, helping them understand what they're doing, what they're getting. Just last year alone, um, there was $100,000 job I sold because of this. $50,000. I just learned yesterday we are GCing a project, and if everything truly goes through, it's like $400,000 almost, right? And used Moasure for that too, right? And it helps me on the back end be confident in how to bid something from a material standpoint and being able to say, okay, this is exactly what we're going to need. But then also from the presentation standpoint of showing the customers, no, that this is exactly what we're doing. It's not just guesses. And then you weigh that over top of satellite, and all of a sudden it just comes to life for people. And so I find it to be a tool that if I didn't have, I'd be constantly be thinking to myself, man, how long am I going to wait before I just get it? You know?
Yeah. This echoes or reflects a lot of the stories and conversations that we had when we met attendees at this year's Fence Tech 25, isn't it? I was going to say 24. I was at last year as well. Um, I find it really intriguing as well, your test of with your friend Robert, where you're measuring in a straight line and he's using the wheel and you're using Moasure. In fact, if you use Moasure 2 Pro, you'll find that it's now 99.7% accurate. So that'll pretty much land you on the dime as well. Some of the conversations we were having, and I don't know if you can identify with this as well, Michael, is that Moasure versus using more traditional measuring tools is that you're just tracing over the space you're measuring with Moasure, but you're not having to get your pen and paper out and write it down. And correct me if I'm wrong, some of those complicated curves, I mean, those look like works of art that you showed me earlier on ArcSite.
Yep.
They're well-defined arcs, they're beautiful, they're deliberate. I don't know how I would pull my hair out if I'm measuring that with a measuring tape, but the conversation I'm having with people using Moasure is you're just walking that curve and it's measuring every twist, every turn, every inch, every step, and drawing it all out at the same time. So I know your friend Robert, he's measuring with the wheel, but then he's got to write that down and write the numbers down. And then he's got to go home and he's got to transfer that into something that's more presentable to a client. And then you've got to hope that you've got your numbers right. Because what if you've missed something? As versus Moasure is that you measure the perimeter, and if you want to know the cross section from point A to point C or D, that's the other side. Well, you've not measured that at the time, but you can just select a point on your Moasure app and select the other point on the Moasure app, and it instantaneously gives you the distance between them. But not just that, is that it's giving you, because you can be forgiven for thinking it's 2D, but it's 3D as well. I don't know if you've had much use for that. So it's giving you the length, the rise and the run. Do you find that useful?
Yeah, especially when we do railing.
Of
So
course, yeah.
so we do a lot of handrail. And so if
Mm,
it's a stoop or a staircase that you're going with, you're able to see, okay, one, if you just take it out of the stand and you do it by hand and just place it down, you can get an entire 3D image of what that staircase is going to look like. And then from there, you can say, okay, this is what my post spacing needs to be. This is the angle that we're going with. And so if you have landings where your transitions for your different angles. And so that's super beneficial there. And going back really quick, so that measurement competition we were doing, I was the one using the wheel,
Oh, I
and
beg
then
your pardon. I
and
got that
then and
backwards.
then Robert was he was using the Measure app on the iPhone. So that was so separate from Moasure in that instance. But
Mm,
even there, if you're using the Measure app on your iPhone, you're not necessarily getting all of that transferred into a drawing either. And
mm,
so that's where, again, it's like, is it helpful? It can be very helpful, but if I had one project where recently I show up
okay.
and this currently under construction fe remodel going on at this hotel. And
Mm,
so this was a retaining wall, and I went out and used Moasure and measured out that retaining wall curve and was able to give them custom measurements. And then over here, there's elevation issues that are going on. And so there's a big step down here. And so on the 2D, that might not come through fully, but I was able to use that and then reference the Moasure measurements of height to go in and create a drawing like this, where I'm like superimposing this is essentially what you're going to be looking at afterwards because
mm,
I know what those transitions are going to look like. And so you're able to essentially combine the data you're getting from the Moasure app, from the actual elevation change and all of that, bring it into this is
mm,
actually all on ArcSight, but
mm.
super super helpful because of being able to go in and rely on that data and not have to remember and be like, okay, what was that measurement? And another actually super helpful thing is measuring whenever your gate is on a slope. If you get a gate that's welded square, you're going to have a huge gap on one side, and the other side is going to be hitting the ground. And so we custom make our gates to follow the slope. And so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll just measure and say, okay, here's where the gate's going to start, here's where it's going to end, and you just do a cross section and it says, great, this is your angle, this is your rise, this is your run. And so you can know very easily. And if you're measuring with Moasure and they want a gate placement to change, you don't have to go back out to the site and say, well, I didn't take that measurement. You have it all stored there with the elevation data. So if they shift, it's like, okay, well, the new measurement should be this then, which is pretty sweet.
Absolutely. And if you're measuring all of that, is it just you with Moser? Like you're solar, right? You've got no one else that has to hold the other end of a tape kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just at a let's see here, it was a Super 8 hotel, and I'd have to
Are you finding that you're
yes.
able to do a lot more measurements, a lot more quotes using Moser than you would historically? The fact that you can just go out solo, take this out of your back pocket and just fly around the space, and it's all measured and drawn out for you by the time you're leaving.
It's really nice, So like this, for example, this was a Super 8 motel, and the person literally offered. He said, "Okay, do you want me to come and hold the other end of the tape measure for you?" And I was like, "Here,
Mm,
let me show you something really cool." And I walked him through, and I said, "This is all I have to do."
yeah.
And I've said, "Here's your spot. Here's your spot. You're going with your curve. You're coming in, and this is just like a little patio railing fence that they're doing." And then I went from that, and if I were to take apart what I did, this is literally what Moser gave me
So the client is now seeing in
in real
seconds or
time.
minutes their site, their space, their area unraveling or revealing itself on your phone in real time. So you're not having to go back, leave the site, burn the midnight oil, redraw everything to be presentable and send it back to them. So right there and then, you can take the client step by step. He can see it all mapped out on his phone and he can
Yeah,
see his site in 3D. I mean, that really must help in terms of accountability, transparency, trust, because t they say time can really kill the deal, but you're saving so much time here. Is that helping with these quotes?
I think so. I think that there are, and it depends on the customer. Some
Of
customers truly
course.
don't care, and they're just like,
Mm,
okay, if I get more from you, you must be charging me more, and I don't feel like I need that. But that's not the type of customer that we want to be working with, anyways. Typically,
yeah.
you know, that
Mm,
we really value working with people uh, who value the service that we can provide,
they
and
know your
so
worth. They respect
yeah.
what you do. They appreciate it. Yeah.
And
Dream clients.
yeah, so I think that that's a factor in it for sure. But this layout really helped me because one, we have ArcSight built out very well, so that way we can actually take the drawing data and get real
Yeah.
results from it quickly.
We've a, we've
And
a really
so I
good
think that,
so I was just going to say is that the guys at ArcSight, they're great. We've a really good relationship with them. We've done a podcast or two and demonstrations where we've showed Moasure syncing with ArcSight. It's CAD made easy. It's a no-brainer. I was going to ask you actually, like, has Moasure, like, this looks intricate. It looks tricky. There's curves and bends. There's changes in direction. There's angles. There's utilities. There's so much information, but you can all input it on the fly with Moasure. But have you found, has Moasure actually ever saved your bacon on any jobs that would have been a mess using traditional methods?
yeah, I think that anytime where there are yeah, those weird curves going on, or you need special elevation measurements. Those are like the go-to where it's like, okay, I need this. And so even with that job where we did the garden fence, that one, I don't know how long I would have spent there trying to measure and confirm that I had everything right if I
Is
didn't
that
have Moasure, you know?
Is that the garden fence you sent me? I don't know if you want to show people that fence that we're
Yeah.
talking about with the concrete curved paths. So
Yep.
the
Yep.
accuracy has to be spot on because as we know, concrete's just unforgiving. And that's the one you showed me earlier,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yep. So that's this
Yeah.
one here,
I don't know if you
and
got some of the photos you sent me as well. It's a
yeah, let's
great
see if
job,
I
really
do.
well done, finished.
I'll see if I can pull those up right now.
I mean, you can just
But
tell even from the image, it's not a straightforward job. The coast isn't always clear. It's complex. It's irregular. Um, yeah,
right.
it's
And
amazing.
let's see if I can find those. Maybe I'll have to pull up the email and get them out.
A lot of the guys that I spoke to, a lot of the people I spoke to at Fence Tech this year, they say Mosier's a beast, if that's the word I remember, on the curves and slopes.
Sure.
I mean, would you
Sure.
say what's your take? Do you agree with them?
Yeah, I would say it is it's the tool that I need if I'm doing anything that's complex, you know?
Hmm.
So it's like what I think what it has allowed is where in the past you might just say, no, I can't do that. Now you're able to sell things that you before could never do, if that makes
Yeah,
sense,
it
because of
does.
that.
Perfect sense.
And so that's where I really appreciate it.
Hmm.
And I will share this now. Can you see that?
I can see it.
Yeah, so this is some of the finished pictures. We have video in there, but
Hmm.
it ended up turning out really great. And from a logistical standpoint, not everything on this job went perfect. We've everything in here actually was like old concrete foundation, so those posts were really tough to get in the ground.
I bet that could
But we
make it a
used
headache and a nightmare.
yeah. So it was yeah, we used all steel posts and then we framed it out with
Hmm.
cedar, and then we have like a 1 by 1 mesh that was installed there. And
So
so
using a combination, I guess, of Arcsite and Moser, is that helping you just like nail the perfect post spacing? Because that just looks unforgiving if you make a mistake there.
yeah, I think that what it does is it helps you plan from a how much material is this going to take? And then
Mm,
when you're on site, I think a good installer is going to be able to adapt if needed. But if you're not projecting that well, and it's a bid job where you say we're doing it by this amount, and that job, that number has to stay the same,
mm,
having an accurate number on the front end of where those need to go and how it's going to lay out. One, helps you predict labor more accurately. Two, you're not going to be wasting as much materials. And so I think that what it does is it helps you be more profitable because of that. And
yeah.
so while you could, I could just guess and say, well, here's my guess. Here you go, throw a number out there. You just don't have accuracy. And I think the way that we want to run our business is we want to know our numbers and we want to be able to um, charge the customer exactly what we need to do a good job. Not charge too much because
Mm,
we don't know what we're doing, and not lose our bacon
mm,
because we don't know what we're doing, you know?
yeah. You want those clients to be calling you back.
Yes. Yeah. So it ended up working out great, and I think uh it was a lot of hard work to get the fence put in, but it was a lot of easy work to
Mm.
plan it out.
Looks amazing. Can I ask, Michael, what would you say to other fence pros out there thinking about stepping into Moasure, ArcSite, that kind of a workflow?
Anyone who is looking for, okay, should I give it a shot? Should I not give it a shot? I
Mm,
would say if you're wa- wanting to stay in your ways and you want to just be cookie cutter, straight lines, boxes, I think that if you were to try it out and be looking for reasons to not like it, you'll be able to find those. But if you're wanting to say, okay, I want to be open to doing more custom things. I want to be open to uh, embracing technology and making my workflow quicker. If you're open to saying, okay, I want to improve on this and have a setup or a system that can be repeatable and that can be something that is you'll get to the end of trying it out. And I think if you give it a shot and you actually say, okay, I'm going to invest some time into this and learn how to do it, and you get good at it, after that, I don't think you're going to be able to look back.
mm,
But if you're just saying, hey, I'm going to give it a shot, I tried it for two jobs and I still had to double check it and I'm doing my work twice. Well, that's just because you haven't built up the trust yet. And I think that what I can say is that when it's used properly, Moasure for a fence application is absolutely trustworthy. And
mm,
so we're not surveyors here, right? And
mm,
so the point I think of Moasure is to give us access to a tool that is very close to what a surveyor would be using, but have it be easy and have it be affordable. And I think that in terms of return on investment, if I look at the number of sales that I've made using Moasure as a primary measuring tool, it's paid for itself 1,000 times over,
I think,
probably 2,000 times over.
well, those are some big hitting numbers. I think, Michael, that says it all. I just want to thank you so much for like these amazing stories, these amazing insights, this amazing advice on the fencing industry and using Mojo as a whole. And just want to say to all the folks that this has been an absolute blast. So a big thanks to Michael from Madison Fence Company for hanging out with me and hanging out with all of us and sharing some honest, straight shooting insight into the world of fencing and how Michael here is staying ahead of the curve, literally, forgive the pun, with Moasure. If you liked this conversation, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a little review if it helps more good people find these stories. And everyone needs to hear Michael's story just here. And if you're curious to see what Michael and his crew are building, head over to madisonfencecompany.com. Some amazing insights, some great images, some great case studies on there. And for Moasure, it's Moasure.com. So, all right, that's it for now. Stay inspired, keep building, and we'll catch you next time.